What we don't want is graduates who are overwhelmed and don't know what to do next.
Right.
What we do want are graduates who are maybe overwhelmed, but do know what to do next. And they know what to do next because they've been thinking, and we've been helping them think about who are you, what is it you want to study, what are some of the problems or challenges that you want to tackle, where can you pursue that kind of meaningful work, and help them find it.
Welcome to Work, Learn, Repeat, the Co-operative and Experiential Education podcast from the University of Waterloo, where we explore work-integrated learning and how to help prepare students, employers, and educators for the future of work. I'm your host, Jody Szymanski. Today, I get to speak to the Associate Provost of Co-operative and Experiential Education, Dr. Norah McRae, about impact and how it can contribute to the future of work. A lot of people talk about impact and having an impact, so much so that it's almost become a buzzword. Mm-hmm. When we talk about impact in cooperative and experiential education, what do we actually mean?
Well, what I mean when I say the word impact, and that I hope others understand, is it's the difference that something is going to make. So in the case of co-op and work integrated learning, what difference is that student going to make? And we think of that in terms of hopefully a positive difference and an impact, an outcome of their activity that actually moves the dial in some way.
And why are we so concerned about impact in cooperative and experiential education?
Well, because I think we want to come back to what is the meaning of a quality work integrated learning or a co-op experience, right? And one of the keys is that the experience is meaningful and substantial. So what does a meaningful experience mean if you dig into that a little bit?
Right.
It means that you're doing something that is useful, that is of value, that makes a difference, that has a contribution, that is something that is meaningful.
Right.
So you're not, for example, having a work term where you're sitting making paper airplanes or sitting in the corner being ignored, but rather you're brought in for a reason and you're given something useful to do and you're able to make a contribution. And that's why impact and making a difference connects in with meaning, and why meaning is so important for a really quality work term.
And what do we know about Gen Z and their desire to have an impact?
Well, the values work that we've done and the team has done has really shown that Gen Z wants to have meaningful work. They don't want busy work. They don't want their skills and their capabilities and their interests to lie fallow, but rather to be able to make a contribution, make a difference, and be able to move some dial forward. They want that.
Right. And so in wanting to have that impact, we know that there's already an existing framework that can help guide students and employers to actually having an impact. Can you talk a little bit about what that framework is?
Yeah. The framework that we're using is the UNSDGs, because the UNSDGs cover 17 goals that have been identified through a great deal of work and research that touch on really all of the really important things that we as people should be thinking about. That doesn't mean we can, clean water, clean air, justice, livable cities, reduction of poverty, reduction of hunger.
Big problems.
Big problems that lots of people are facing. And that doesn't mean to suggest that we should all be working on all 17 at any given time, but it provides a very fulsome framework so that someone, no matter what they're studying, no matter what level they're at, no matter what their own values and capabilities are, can find their way in the SDGs. They'll find something that is a place where they'd like to make a contribution, a problem that maybe they'd like to solve, a difference that they'd like to make. So that's why we've used the UN SDGs as our framework, because it is so broad and it is really connected to things that the world really needs. And that we know, if you go back to the question about Gen Z values, that our students really want to contribute to because they're worried about those things too.
Absolutely.
The other reason for the UN SDGs, of course, is it's something that the University of Waterloo has really aligned itself with. We have the SDN network, where we have the headquarters for institutions that are doing SDG work across Canada. So there's a lot of commitment. There's a lot of groundwork already at the University of Waterloo that really resonates with students. So this isn't a new concept for them that we're coming at it out of the blue, but rather reaffirming in the space of co-op and work integrated learning how they can engage with the SDGs.
And so it's always important to walk the walk and talk, as well as talk the talk. So what are we doing in cooperative and experiential education to incorporate the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, one of them is SDG goal number 4 is about quality education.
Right.
So I would say that's kind of the heart of what we're doing with work integrated learning. Is it's an educational program enhancing the educational experience of students. So right there in and of itself, we're contributing to the UN SDGs. And the other place really is the way that we bring it into the education of our students. So we introduce the concepts of the SDGs, we reference it in different activities that we do, we support students in thinking about it when they're doing their reflections about where they may have touched on one of these SDGs in their work terms.
And so how do we help employers incorporate impact or even, directly the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into the work that they do with the student?
Well, many employers are also concerned about these things. And many organizations are also aligned with the SDGs, whether explicitly or implicitly in the nature of their work. And where employers can use this concept is to either make that more explicit with students.
Right.
So when they have, in very simple terms in a job description, explaining the organization, saying this is what the organization is about, and actually we're really interested in issues related to clean water. And on your work term, you might get to do something around that. So just being more explicit about that, just connecting the dots for students can be really good. I think showcasing the kind of work that companies are doing, and not just companies, any kind of organization, nonprofits, community-based, as well as industry, is really making that clear that if a student works there, not only will they be getting a good employment experience and developing those job skills that they want, but they'll be able to contribute to something which will make a difference. They'll be able to have even more meaning in their work experience. So where we're moving to is a frame of reference about job-ready graduates to really future-ready graduates that are ready to tackle some of these key problems.
Based on the research that we've done on job descriptions, as well as the Gen Z values, by putting that explicitly in the job description, you can really make sure that you get the right students to do that and that students actually want to work there because that aligns with their values.
Absolutely right. And for those students where that matters, you're touching a motivational point, which is very hard to quantify, but really powerful. And I think that that's something that we owe ourselves and our students to really make that evident for them, how they can take that path. I also think for organizations that maybe can't rely on a big brand name, maybe don't have giant budgets and can afford the highest levels of compensation, this is another way to show value and ways that students can engage, which can be a very powerful attractor to both recruit and retain this talent.
Absolutely. We have an activity that we've organized that kind of helps students and employers bring the SDGs into their work. The SDGs at Work activity. Can you talk a little bit about that and why we're doing it?
Yeah, sure. We started that a number of years ago just to see what it would be like to start changing the narrative or adding to the narrative of employability, this narrative of impact. And we started a few years ago just with students who were doing international work terms around what was it. First of all, what was it that they were experiencing? What were they aware of with regard to the SDGs and that kind of thing? What we found in those very first beginnings of that project, was that there was a low level of awareness at that time. And so clearly we needed to increase the level of awareness of what we were talking about, both for our students and employers. So that's part of the activity, is awareness building. And then connecting that in so that students can see, okay, this is what this framework's about. Here are the different ways I can engage. And I'm now more aware of what I might do on that work term, and then helping them self-assess or articulate what they're doing as it relates to that. So where we are at now is we've moved from those international work terms to all work terms, domestic and international, and a very simple exercise where both the employer and the student can answer very simply, and in the case of the employer, did the student's work have an impact on advancing an SDG? And if so, which one or ones? And on the student side, during your work term, did you advance an SDG? And if so, which one or ones? And what we've done with that simple question is also offer more opportunity for employers and students to answer more deeply. And there's more quantitative material, qualitative material. But what we've discovered from that, and the first time we opened it up to all students and employers was this May to August term.
Okay.
And very interestingly, we got thousands and thousands of responses from employers and thousands from students, which tells us a few things. First of all, they really do get the concept now. So a lot of work has happened in the last few years just generally to increase awareness. They were able to answer that question. And it was very interesting to see the distribution of the kind of impact that employers said students were having and students said they were having. And we are now in a place to be able to tell the story that our students are not only job ready and getting really great employment outcomes from work integrated learning and co-op, and also contributing to employers' bottom line, because we know that from other research we've done, the value add that students have. But we can also say, and under the right conditions, they can help organizations advance the SDGs.
And it seems that if an employer doesn't maybe have the in-house capacity to focus on the UN SDGs, but really wants to make a commitment to that hiring a co-op student for a term to get that going could be a really great start for them.
Yeah, absolutely right. Especially with the kind of the preparatory work we're doing in place already. Absolutely, that can be a way to activate that within an organization if, as you say, it's not already underway.
Exactly.
And much as well, Jody, is employers and organizations are doing this work, but they might not necessarily call it a UN SDG. Right. But it's still good work, and it's still work that they actually really appreciate light being shone on it and how it contributes to the greater good as well.
And as part of that SDGs at work activity, my understanding is that the students and maybe employers come back together as a group and can actually present the work that they've done and show their impact.
Yeah, if they want to. That's very much an optional portion of the activity, that they can engage in that kind of collaborative work and sharing of information, definitely. And the other part, as I mentioned, there's deeper interview questions that we have added to get for employers that want to, and I think we have several hundred actually that have filled out the information, who want to tell us a bit more about what they're doing.
Right.
And how they see this work and the use of students in the future, continuing to advance this work and ideas that they have for students to be even more prepared to do this work. So we haven't dug into that data yet, really, but that will, I think, give us a lot more insight on where we take this project.
Absolutely. Well, and help share with employers the type of impacts that students can have with them, as well as the impact they've had on the student and on the world, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really the bottom line here is the story that we are getting ready and actually are ready now to tell is that not only do we have this amazing array of talent for employers and organizations worldwide, but that talent is motivated and interested in doing work that has meaning. And what a wonderful contribution that the University of Waterloo is giving to society as a result of that. And I think that that's something that we should be so proud of our students.
And how does the topic of meaningful work better prepare our students and employers to tackle the future of work?
Well, as we know, the world just continues to become even more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, doesn't it? Right? Every morning you open up, read the news, and you think, yikes, well, here we go. So that uncertainty is very hard to navigate. And it's especially hard to navigate when you're early on in your career or haven't even really launched a career. You don't know what steps to take next. It all seems actually, it could seem just really overwhelming. And what we don't want is graduates who are overwhelmed and don't know what to do next.
Right.
What we do want are graduates who are maybe overwhelmed, but do know what to do next. And they know what to do next because they've been thinking, and we've been helping them think about, who are you? What is it you want to study? What are some of the problems or challenges that you want to tackle? Where can you pursue that kind of meaningful work, and help them find it? because that is a very important ingredient to being able to function in a world that's increasingly uncertain.
And I think with employers, we can really help them by building out that talent strategy, because as this world becomes more volatile, we also have a large generation that'll be leaving the workforce in the next few years and has already started leaving. And so how do we prepare them?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question too, because you're absolutely right. Certainly in our context, the demographic shifts are exactly that. And I think that there is a really interesting space here for us to think about students coming into workplaces and not only, being job ready and interested in making a meaningful impact, but also having the opportunity to gain from the wisdom of the more senior generation that is in the workplace with them, and how we can help set up intentional engagement with those different generations in workplaces that can help them see how to make sense and meaning and impact and all that kind of thing that can come with working with others that have maybe more experience in this space and more wisdom to offer.
So we've talked about being job ready, but also being future ready. Is there a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we think of job ready, then already we have in our minds that there's a job to be ready for.
Right.
So what happens if there isn't? Or the job that you thought you were ready for actually vanishes because something else comes in, like AI, for example, or something changes very radically with what the context is that job's no longer there. So being future ready, of course, includes the concept of how are you going to support yourself, because most people have to. But that may or may not be a job as we know it today. It may be different kinds of employment. It could be all sorts of different ways of earning a living.
Right.
Entrepreneurship, just having your own set of consulting projects, like whatever that is, right? So that's one of the differences. What we know of as a job is different or could be different in the future. So we want our students to be able to navigate that space.
Right.
But in that also, we have a history and a tendency to train students in certain disciplines, and then they follow that discipline towards a career, right? So I'm studying geography, I'm going to become a geographer. I study history, I'm going to become a historian. Now, we've broken away from that quite a bit by using, for example, in our case, a Future Ready talent framework. What are talents that you need? How can you mix and match those talents in different contexts? But thinking about impact and thinking about problems is also another way of lining up the skills and capabilities you need to find your path.
Right.
So for example, say you're really concerned about clean water. Well, that can require all sorts of different disciplines, all sorts of different capabilities, all sorts of different opportunities, and you can still be chipping away at the problem of clean water. So again, it allows kind of an opening of the mind to think about how one is going to be gainfully employed, or at least be able to support oneself by looking at not just the skills you need for whatever career you have in mind, but what problems are out there that need to be solved, and also the critical thinking around what problems are around the corner that we haven't thought of yet.
Right.
But you've got that mindset already so that you're like, oh, woof, this is coming at me. That's okay. I know how to think about that, plan for that, and prepare my next steps for that.
Well, and I think too, by having that impact, like knowing you have that impact helps you get up out of bed every day and go to work, and because it becomes more than work and you've got that motivation. And I think any employer wants to see that in their staff every day.
Yeah, for sure. It really is about that, in building that intrinsic motivation, right? Sometimes employability and employment, some of it comes down to extrinsic motivation. What's the title you have? What's the salary you're going to get? What's the benefit package, right? Those are all important. I'm not saying they're not right, but those are extrinsic motivators. Now we're talking about intrinsic motivators. What matters to you? Where do you want to see yourself when you look back on your life, when you're retiring? It's those sorts of things which create a different value proposition, really.
Right.
And absolutely, employers are looking for motivated people. And some use sticks and carrots, and others use other things. And this is another way of looking at it. But I think in more than a just how are we going to convince young people to come here, it really, I hope, results in students finding employers that really share similar concerns and are wanting to work together towards solving some problems. It's not just about how does this help recruit and those kind of
Absolutely.
more transactional spaces, but rather more collaborative and co-creative spaces.
And it's that benevolence that Dave talked about in the Gen Z values about really doing something for the betterment of the world.
Yeah. And, really, we need all the help we can get, don't we? So the more we can do to help align students in this way and help employers show up in this way, I think that it won't be for everybody and it won't be for every context, but where it works, there's real magic there, and it's really quite lovely.
Thanks for tuning into our conversation with Associate Provost of Cooperative and Experiential Education, Dr. Norah McRae. Subscribe to future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or SoundCloud. Or you can listen to the full conversation on YouTube. Follow us on our social media platforms for more up-to-date information about cooperative and experiential education. You can find all the links in our show notes. Join us again for our next episode of Work, Learn, Repeat.